just 5 minutes, 9 years in the prisons of Syria, I was shocked at the extent of evil in these prisons, and even more stunned by Hiba's courage to persevere through one nightmare after another. But mixed in with her pain and suffering, Hiba also tells stories of lifelong friendships that formed within those four walls, and of the little miracles that got her through the most difficult of human experiences. The minute I saw this book, I had to read it. This book would reveal the horrors that took place in Syria decades ago, the horrors that Syrians learned well not to speak of for fear of severe punishment by the ruling regime. The horrors that divided my own family and forced my parents to flee from their homeland, leaving me behind with my grandparents, whom I lived with for 7 years before my grandparents found a way to get me out of the country and reunite me with my parents. I read Hiba's book in one night. Hiba's story shook my soul. I have to admit that I was younger and much more naive back then, and I thought for sure if the civilized world only knew of these vicious crimes against humanity, they would do something to stop it. People would care and the international community would act. Of course, today I know better. The civilized world, the United Nations, our fellow Muslim countries have all let Syria down. The world has sat by and watched as over 200,000 Syrians died senselessly, and hundreds of thousands more endure what experts have called industrial-scale torture in the prisons of Syria. Hiba was a young woman at the time, and when Secret Service agents Hiba was growing up at a time when Secret Service agents hunted down and imprisoned anyone even remotely associated with political opposition. When a wanted criminal fled from their clutches, they took hostages. And that's what happened to Hiba. She was a hostage for her brother. Hiba's story begins when Mukhabarat agents storm her apartment and ask for just 5 minutes of her time. They drag her to a military interrogation unit where a long list of fabricated allegations awaits her. Hiba spends 9 years in the prisons of Syria. In her memoir, she reveals to us the nightmares that come to life in the Mukhabarat interrogation and torture chambers. Hiba also tells us the stories of various cellmates she meets, other political prisoners, communists, spies, children, and even members of her own family. I would like to read to you a short excerpt from her story. This is from the day that Hiba was arrested. Mukhabarat officers banged on our door with fists and rifles. Fatima ran for her scarf and wrapped it around her head. She pulled the door open. Officers charged into our apartment. They moved with unbelievable violence. One of them jumped onto our roof. Another ran to the window. A third one to the kitchen. And a fourth, and a fifth, and a 10th spread throughout our apartment. One of the officers forced his way into our bedroom. He saw a copy of the Quran on a shelf, grabbed it, threw it onto the ground, and stomped on it with both feet like an enraged maniac. The other officers smashed and damaged many of our belongings. They searched every corner of every dresser of every closet. What are they searching for? I heard a deep, monstrous voice from the living room call out, "Wahiba Dabba." My body froze. They're here for me. I stepped forward. "No one here by that name," I quivered and shook my head. "Take every girl back to her room and check their IDs," the leader of the group instructed. We followed his orders immediately. We walked into our rooms, trembling with every step. One of the officers, a young man, who I think was performing his mandatory military service as an officer for the Mukhabarat, took my ID. He looked at it, looked up at my face, and then back at my ID, as if to make certain it was really me in the picture. His gaze went back and forth between the picture and me. His eyes swelled with tears. "You're from my hometown," he said, and blinked back tears. "God help you." "Why? What's going on?" "God will give you patience. What can you do? God will help." "Why do I need help? Have they come for me?" I felt as if I was sinking into a deep, dark well. He looked down at the ground and whispered, "Yes." The young man slowly shuffled back to the living room and handed my ID to the leader of the group, who continued to shout, "Wahib al-Jabbar!" The leader looked at me, his eyes filled with fury. "You told me with such nerve and shamelessness that there's no one here by that name." He turned to one of the officers and said, "Take her to her room and search her well." Today, hundreds of thousands of Syrians continue to face this terrifying fate. I urge every one of you to read his memoir. Although her story took place many years ago, like a horrible, recurring nightmare, the corruption, the terrorizing, and the torture of the Assad regime has not changed. If anything, they have grown more horrifying. The Assad regime has not taken a single step towards humanity. The enormity of the suffering of the Syrian people, with over 200,000 dead, hundreds of thousands missing, hundreds of thousands in prisons, and millions becoming refugees and internally displaced, can leave us feeling overwhelmed. But we have a beautiful dream of a Syria where all people can live equal, free, and dignified, and we will never give up on this dream. As an activist, I have many times come across people who tell me all the work we do is useless. And to them I say, I would rather stand up for justice and fail than sit by and watch my fellow human beings suffer. A wise person once said, just because we can't do everything, it doesn't mean we should do nothing. Each one of us has the power to touch someone else's life. As members of humanity, as people of faith, as women, as citizens of a country where we take so many blessings for granted, it is our duty to raise our voices with Syrians and to do everything we can to ease their suffering. Let us follow the footsteps of these inspirational women like Bayan and Khatib. May Allah accept our efforts and guide us to the right path. Thank you.